I'm Angela Sutherland, and this is Win the Day with James Whittaker.
You're listening to Win the Day with James Whittaker.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Broadcasting from Los Angeles, California. Here's your host, James Whittaker.
Let's go.
Hey winners, welcome back to Win the Day. If this is your first time here, we sit down with some of the world's true change makers to give you all the tips, tools, and strategies to win the day every day. The quote for this episode comes from Amelia Earhart and says, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity." Joining me in the studio is Angela Sutherland, who is the co-founder and CEO of nutrition company Yumi that is taking the world by storm. If you're a parent, you'll know how difficult it can be to get healthy food for your children, especially with so much deception in the food industry. But what you may not know is that scientists consider nutrition in the first 1,000 days of a child's life to be the most important environmental factor in human development. Pregnant with her first child and unhappy with baby food options readily available to her, Angela and her co-founder Evelyn set out to do something about it. In 2015, they launched Yumi with a mission to build a healthier generation. Today, Yumi has become one of the fastest growing kids nutrition companies with more than 10 million meals delivered. Prior to her entrepreneurial journey, Angela worked in private equity and investment banking. Her mother was a refugee of the Vietnam War, moving to America in 1975. In this episode, we're going to talk with Angela about balancing kids with career, toughest moments along the way, the best lessons from her entrepreneurial journey, and how she built Yumi into the powerhouse it is today. Before we begin, the right bit of inspiration can completely change the trajectory of someone's life. So if there's a friend or loved one out there who needs to hear this episode or could use some help to win the day, share it with them right now. All right, let's win the day with Angela Sutherland. Angela, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on the Win the Day show.
Thanks for having me.
What an amazing journey you've had. I'm so excited to talk about all the awesome things that you've done and still doing. You were born in the US, but your mum was a refugee of the Vietnam War. How open was she with you about the struggles that she had to overcome? And are there any specific lessons or stories she shared with you that you remember today?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think who I am today is absolutely because of what she went through. She was probably the strongest person I've ever met. I think one of the things that we talked about was just how much you can overcome. So how much the world can throw at you and you don't let that stop you from life. And we really actually never got into details of the war until I was maybe, 20, in my 20s. Like, I think it was something we never really talked about because it was too close, too soon, too painful. But one of the things that she really instilled in me was how much you can do with your life and how you should never let anything get you down and hold you back. And I carry that forward today. And I think that one of the best things about that sort of concept is just an unbridled optimism. Like, it's okay. Like, shake it off. Like, the world's going to be great. Like, everything's going to be okay. And I think feeling that way allows me to get through really tough decisions and really tough times. Because if you let the world weigh you down at will, there are a lot of things thrown at you. There's a lot of things in this world that are unfair or scary. And I think being optimistic that the world's better and will be better, I think really, again, allowed me to push further in my career, take bigger risks. And so that's sort of the lesson that she imparted to me.
Yeah, your mum went on to eventually, have a lot of success in her own right professionally, had one of the largest minority-owned auto suppliers in the entire country. Was she a business mentor to you specifically, or was it just more of a traditional supportive mother-daughter relationship?
She wasn't a business mentor per se. I would say that the company really started actually right after she passed away. But my whole life was surrounded by business. So, since a young kid at the table, I'd listen to conversations around, streamlining supply chain, and so I think it's sort of by proxy, like you're around it all the time, you hear it all the time. And I also think, again, seeing struggle and success is a really great mentorship. I think, when we talk about mentorship or when I talk about it broadly, I actually think the best mentors or people that you should look for as mentors are not necessarily the ones that can teach you the most specifically about an assignment or, your job, but rather can teach you the most about yourself. Like, can you find someone that believes in you and allows you to believe in yourself? So and I think that relationship can build confidence, build, sort of resilience to things because you feel like, hey, this mentor believes in me. This older, smart person believes in me. And if that's true, I should probably believe in myself too. And I think that's actually what I think a good mentorship is. And so in that sense, she has absolutely been a mentor to me because she always gave me that.
People talk about education as being one of the greatest gifts that you can have, but you mentioned there the conversations that you're having within the home. To me, the conversations that happened in the home were an unbelievable advantage. What are you focused on as your kids are going to get? I know they're young at the moment, but when they get older, is there anything in particular that you're focused on to make sure that they're strong, they're resilient, they're resourceful? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, my kids right now are 6 and 8, and so it's actually a really good time to have at the dinner conversations around sort of general broader concepts. And so we talk about resilience and optimism. We talk about not letting something bother you. I think you can see it in early ages when kids get very frustrated. They can't finish an assignment. They get something wrong and they get very angry. And it's just about, taking a deep breath, thinking about what to do right. How do you fix it? We talk about there's no such thing as a problem. It's just a way to find a solution. It's how do we solve this? There's nothing that's nothing should stop you here, And I think, or it's little things there's no losing, there's winning and learning. There's little things that we try to talk about so that way they see that life is a long journey. There's no moment in time. So today you might not have done as well as you thought, but you can learn from that and then you can still win.
Yeah, the love of learning sounds like that's a big thing you're trying to instill. And what about your time in private equity and investment banking? Did you reach a point where you just said, enough is enough, I need to get out of here and do my own thing? Or do you just feel like that it was a natural evolution for you to go and tread your own path?
Yeah, no, I actually loved both of those experiences. So it wouldn't be because I hated it that I had to get out of it. It was actually because I think, one, private equity, and I was on, the side where you're actually the interim CRO or CFO to multiple different companies. So I was already on the operation side. I always wanted to start something, take over something, operate. And it just became a natural evolution because a problem presented itself that I was really passionate about. And I think that's a good sort of path. I mean, either you could be frustrated with what your life is and do something, but for me, it was more just I was very excited about an opportunity.
Was there anything about the companies that you worked with in that role where you were like, look, if I ever have my own company, I would never, ever do this?
I mean, certainly. I was doing distressed debt. So we were turning around companies, and there were a lot of learnings there. And I think what's really funny, it actually, for me, kind of broke down that all companies are inherently the same. And I think learning that was a really great gift because a lot of people think they have an expertise. I'm really good at this job. I'm in this field. I'd be scared to switch sectors. But because private equity is across all sectors, all companies are inherently the same. They need to make money. There are a lot of expenses. They can lose money. It's how are you reducing expenses and making more money, is this, age-old problem across every single industry and every single one. And so your skill set probably will apply in any other sector. And I think, again, that was a gift because it made me less scared to start something. Because people often ask, did you have any experience in food? I was like, I mean, not particularly, but it didn't matter because it was a problem that I had seen before and I could solve.
You're I enjoyed eating food, but not specific business experience in it.
Right, exactly.
And we touched on it a little bit in the intro, but what was the problem that you wanted to solve with Yumi and why did it fall on your shoulders to do it?
Sure. So I'm a big nerd. And so I do a lot of research, and it's, sort of my vice is late night research into clinical trials and weird studies. And when I was pregnant, when I had a baby, I started realizing that a lot of the work for parenting fell on the shoulders of a mother. just there's decisions around anything that they consumed, what they were doing, what they're going to learn. All of these were problems that fell on a mother. And I was working really long hours. I was in private equity, and what to feed my baby fell on me. And so I started doing research around this. And I've always been fascinated with sort of my belief on like long-term sectors. And one of them has always been healthcare, with metabolic disease, aging population. That entire sector, I think, is interesting and will change. Also with food, I think obviously I eat, but I've always been interested in like sort of how the agricultural system will change and what's going to happen there. And when I started researching around childhood nutrition, I was sort of gobsmacked that early childhood nutrition is a period that is actually epigenetic. So that means it alters the expression of your genes. So, people are like, oh, they're born this way. It's actually this nutrition in this period can actually alter that. And sort of easy examples of that are you don't get enough vitamin D, you can get rickets, or calcium, you can get rickets, right? Like if you, you're born, you can't like grow as much. There's, tons of sort of examples around that, but it's actually true for across all vitamins and minerals. So, if you don't get enough iron, your brain doesn't have enough to make neural development. And so it can stunt your IQ. And knowing this really started opening my eyes to sort of growing disparities. So between, affluent cultures, between, sort of places in the world where people live. But if you don't have access to the right nutrition, it can actually change your trajectory. Mm-hmm. And particularly when it comes to feeding your kid, a lot of people don't have a choice. They have to buy commercially made food. They don't have the time or the resources to make everything at home. Mm-hmm. And if you take a step back on who that affects, it often affects working parents. It affects, people that aren't as affluent. So for me, making a commercially available option for baby food was both a calling on, I think, the greater health and, potential for children, but also on parenting. It's like, can you actually offer a better solution for parents so they don't feel bad that they have to work all the time? They don't feel guilty for making these choices. And so it was, I think, a little bit of both of those that I thought was really, really interesting. And on top of that, I think what I think is like a long-term health outcome.
Mm. And the first 1,000 days there, it's not the 1,000 days from when they're born, is it? It's actually the 1,000 days that you're talking about in that example is in the womb?
Yes, in utero. So it's, and if you think about it, that makes so much sense, right? That is why your doctor prescribes prenatal vitamins. That is why, it is the actual nutrition that you're getting, right? And if you don't get enough, you don't take prenatal vitamins, your baby leaches it from your body. And this is always really fascinating to me, but if you're not getting enough calcium, your baby will actually take it from a mother's bones.
Wow.
Right. So it's so important. And that's why it's important to know this, to know all of these things. That's how much your baby needs it. They're growing at an exponential rate. Of course, they're going to need an exponential amount of these things to make that happen.
Yeah. And what I love about what you're doing is, there's products that have been sitting on the shelf for 5 years. They got like 30 grams of sugar. Yeah. And people have the parents who have that parent guilt is real, but we have the best intentions of being like, oh, we're not going to give our kids the packaged food all the time, but it's just impossible. When you're traveling, you're going and doing different things. So having that healthy alternative is such a big one, right? Compared to all the other, not to, I mentioned it in the intro, like the deceptive labeling. It doesn't matter what product you're buying. It can be very tough to find out what's actually healthy. Things like natural and terms like that are very misleading.
That's absolutely right. And I think, what's really sort of a shame is that as a parent, you make 1,000 decisions, right? You make so many decisions in a day, and you would love to be able to say, I just trust this to be good. But because of all this deceptive marketing, because there's, hidden things and you don't know what's right, you just end up going with something that other people have used or look seemingly healthy enough. Mm-hmm. And so we sort of set forth, can we make a brand that actually was better, that did all of the tests, was very transparent, and so that as we launch new things, you believe that also is better, and you can start to believe that this brand's better for you. Mm. And I think that's that's what's missing here in this space.
We have a lot of mums who listen to the Win the Day podcast who have their own business or want to start their own business. You mentioned a lot of the research that you did there, diving into some of the clinical studies. Mm-hmm. How does someone go about finding studies and how do they know what are the best things to go and look up? Was there any other websites that you would recommend for people to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think everyone that starts a business has to go deep into clinical research. Mm-hmm. I would say I look at PubMed a lot. Like I look, it depends what you're into. Like this is like I was doing scientific research, which is, not every business. Mm-hmm. I think that from a research perspective, if you're going to try to start a company though, there's a lot out there on, business plans and how do you start to make a deck? How do you start to formulate the concept of this company? And I think that one of the best things is actually putting it on paper. Mm-hmm. Like, can you pitch a friend? Can you pitch a parent? Because those are the hard ones. Because those are embarrassing, and you feel. But if you can convince people, like actual people, there's no reason why that doesn't translate to convincing the nation, right? So you can convince. So it starts with the little things. Mm.
Did you have a hard time convincing friends? I feel like it would have been an absolute slam dunk. If I was in that room, I would have said, take my money.
Yeah. The funny thing is that how actually hesitant a lot of people are in general. People are very risk averse, by nature. And so, yes, I had very supportive friends and family, but I also had people that were like, this exists already, or, good luck. And I think that's actually a really good lesson too, is that you're going to have a lot of no's and a lot of people in this world that are going to be like, just more risk averse than you are. Mm. And I think you shouldn't let that stop you, right? Yeah. I think you have to believe in what you're doing. And if you believe in enough and you're optimistic enough, you'll work past all of that.
Yeah, and sometimes the people who care about you most can say no, and it's only when they see the momentum that you've been able to build externally that they come back on board. And it's like, wow, it's interesting.
Yes, exactly. And they think they're doing you a service by being so pessimistic. They think that they're protecting you in some ways. So I wouldn't even take that to be, unique or it's just how people are.
Yeah. And when you were pregnant with your first child, obviously it's very difficult. Even you can read all the books, you can watch all the things, but until you go through it, it's very difficult to know what you're in for. How difficult was the decision to start your business while being pregnant with your first child?
So I was pregnant with my second child.
Oh, was it a second child?
When I started. Yeah. And it was because of my first child that we started the company though. Mm-hmm. So, and it was quite difficult. I'd say it was very difficult to make a leap during a time of, change already. Mm. And I did know what I was getting into because it was my second.
Yeah. So, but I guess just a lot more chaos added to the household, right?
Yeah. So I already knew that it was going to be a lot of work, and I knew that. And so I think it also gave me strength to do it, because after the first one, you realize how fundamentally different your life is. And it already is different, and it already is chaotic. And so adding in some more chaos, I felt was kind of a cherry on top. Yeah.
And how has your mindset evolved since becoming a parent? And is there anything that you've taken from that to apply to your business philosophy?
Yeah, I do think being a parent adds a lot to my perspective around life and business. I think that it makes me much more of a long-term thinker. I always joke that the longest long game is a child. It's like, because you think you're doing these things and you're like, okay, I'm going to sleep train or not sleep train. You have no idea the effect of that until they're 18. It's like, so it's sort of, I have no idea if this, messed you up at all. But so it's sort of this, it takes you out of the momentary gain or the momentary, did I do this one thing really well, to sort of think, let's think of this long term. Let's scope this out for a greater period of time and say, what does it take to get there? And I think that it's actually very helpful in that way. I also, in the same way why I started the company, I also think it throws you into chaos. And so I used to be a very, I'm very type A still, but I used to be very type A, organized, plans, and you realize with children, you cannot do that. There is, there's no plan that goes exactly to plan with children. So I think it makes you a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, everyone has a plan till the toddler turns up.
That's right. Yeah.
Was there a business milestone that you hit where you were like, wow, this is just awesome? It's like a dream come true type thing?
So I think along the way, there's always been a bunch of milestones that I can think of that make me really proud. I'd say that even the first moment of quitting my job, milestone 1 was a big moment, right? It was like, wow, I can't believe we're doing this. It was, very exciting. And then the first time we raised money was, again, like, wow, we're doing this. But really when we started hitting escape velocity, right? So when we started feeding, 2%, 3%, 4% of babies born in America, you start really realizing the impact that you have, and like how many people's lives are changing, how many people are, how real this thing is. And then when we got into retail, it was actually this other pinch me moment of this is nationwide. You can find it in every Target. And I think that was, again, another moment of we were doing this. This is the dream. How
did you balance up exclusivity with Target versus getting distribution with Whole Foods and a whole bunch of other stores?
It was a long time we were thinking about, who should we go with, but for a couple of reasons we chose Target. One, like 95% of our customers were actually also shopping at Target.
The moms love Target.
Yeah, moms love Target. Oh yeah, it's like, and so it was like already you have a great overlap of customer base. But on top of that, everyone shops at Target. So you can be like very, very wealthy. You can be like, taking food stamps, and they accept it across the board. And so you're actually getting broad exposure. And it goes back to our mission of wanting to feed more people, like, want to have health and nutrition available to more people. And so it was a great overlap sort of like on the purpose that we wanted. Yeah. And then I guess the third reason, which is, not to mention how good of a reason it is, but they're great partners. So they're excellent partners to launch with. They work with a lot of startup companies. And I think that allowed us to sort of really see what it could look like at retail.
Yeah. Have you been able to expand internationally as yet, or is that something on the horizon?
International is on the horizon. It's not yet. I think there's, again, so much demand for this worldwide.
Yeah. At Target, I guess, having a partner that has these distribution channels all over the world has got to be a huge advantage when you do want to take that leap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that's a big consideration. It's like who your first partners are and can they take you somewhere else?
And you mentioned investors before there. You've had, some incredible founders. You've got the founders of, I think it was Warby Parker, Harry's, Uber, people like Snoop Dogg involved.
Yes.
How does it feel to have these people supporting you and the mission that you're on?
Again, that's another sort of milestone. It was like sort of pinch me moments every time. I think one of those things was it gives you this confidence that what you're building is worthwhile. And I think, and it's worthwhile from an investment perspective, but these are people and it's their personal money. And so when people part with personal money, that they really believe in it, right? And I think, so it became this, amazing, I guess, badge of honor, like sort of, to have these founders of very successful companies in brands and consumer goods take a look at it and say, I love that. That needs to exist. I want to do that.
Yeah, and a big part of what you wanted to do with your mission was to get more females to support you on the mission, right? You've got women from, a whole bunch of people involved now. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision and how important that is to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, we had someone who came to work with us for a period of time that I absolutely love. Sarah Marie Martin, she came from Goldman Sachs, and she came in, looked at her cap table, and she said, it's a shame you have, this product that's meant for, primarily women are consuming it, and it's mostly men on your cap table. We should fix this, and I think she brought that to our attention, and we went out specifically to then raise money from women, because women are often left out on the investment side. Women either don't have access to certain investments or they're more risk adverse sometimes. But they're often left out. And so they get left out. And that's a huge asset class to be left out in. And so we're like, this should be something for women, give access specifically to women. And so we went out and raised from women, and amazing women joined in that.
I love that. Makes so much sense. Is there a particularly challenging day that you've had along this journey where you were like, oh my God, is this journey even worth it? Or are we going to be able to get unstuck?
That's usually not my mindset. So I generally don't think that there's anything that you can't get out of. So there's no quagmire that is, too sticky. I think my general mindset is we'll figure this out. Have there been times where that has gone on a long time? Absolutely. This is a very big one. But I think that my mindset is always, we will find a way out of this.
I messaged a few friends of mine who are mums who have their own business, and this was the common question that came back. Was there a specific moment when you felt a lot of doubt or overwhelm, and how did you maintain that perseverance and that resilience?
I think most of the doubt comes before you make the leap. So there's so much self-doubting. There's so much what about, kind of questions, so should I do something else? Is this the right thing? Just so many questions will come. And I think, but after you make the leap, there is no turning back. There is no, should I have done something else? You can't ask that question. You are here and you're going to make it work. And so I'd say the doubt happened much before that. And I think, and to get unstuck, I actually was talking about this the other day, which is I have a really amazing co-founder. So my co-founder, Evelyn, she compliments me in all the other ways. I'm a math person. She's an English person. But one of the things that she's very great at, and I admire very much, is that when she makes a decision, she goes for it. And it helped me get out of that doubt, so her being so certain about it helped me become certain of it. I think that actually is true across a lot of co-founders. And I think, so a lot of times I think is finding someone that also believes in it can help you, because whether that's a partner, like an actual co-founder, or that's a spouse or somebody that's let's do this, you can do this. And then you make the jump. And then once you make the jump, you're already there.
So powerful, just taking the leap, so then you can establish a little bit of momentum it's a lot easier to continue from there.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so good. I want to talk about specific business things. If you were a professor and you were teaching a class on Business 101, you had to write a few key lessons or principles on the board, what would it be?
I've said it's a lot, I've touched on it a lot, but I'd say that the number one thing is optimism. Attitude is everything. And it's often lightly said, but it's very true. Doubt will seep in, sort of this negativity can seep in. And I think that, negativity breeds more negativity. So I really think the number one thing you can do is believe in it. And so be optimistic, believe in it, it will work. And if you do, you will find a solution. So there's this level of perseverance that I think people just it's the number one thing you should adopt in your life. It's a little bit of grit, keep going. And it'll get everyone further than you ever imagined you would. The second thing is learn a little bit of the jargon. And I think that is unfortunate, but also very true. The fact that I used to work at Goldman Sachs and I used to be an investment banker and I then was in private equity means that I had this jargon. I knew how to pitch and I knew what people were looking for and sort of the metrics they were going to look at and things and I think that so when I help people create their business plans, people have never done that before. I try to give that a little bit into the deck, and they've always said that that's the most helpful part. And I think so reading other decks or seeing other things out there, I think is very helpful. You sort of learn the way that the system works and what you're supposed to say. And so I think jargon kind of learning is important. And then the third thing is probably surround yourself with really good people. And it maybe feeds into the first one, but attitude is everything. So finding people that are excited to work with you, work with on the project, passionate about something is, again, a momentum builder. The early days, it's not like you're going to go poach someone that works at a huge tech company. The point is actually, can you build momentum? Can you catapult yourself from stage 1 to 2, and or even the stage 0 to 1. And so finding people that are excited and motivated, and everyone can work together and push you along is such a big part of it. And to think that you should do it alone is a mistake, because it's very hard to always self-motivate every day, right? It's in the same way it's hard to work out every day. It's, it's getting people to help build with you is such a big part of like company building.
The technical side and the jargon you mentioned you got there from your career, the optimism, the grit, and the growth mindset, the team, the relationships. Where did that come from? I'm wondering if there are any specific books that you have read or anything like that have really helped shape that mindset for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a fair amount. So I read like all the growth mindset books. I actually started reading that only after I had kids, though, because it's for my children. But I mean, the obvious books are Grit being one of them. And there's Shoe Dog. But I think that really was more a collection, so like a compendium of advice and a compendium of books that I've read that kind of led to this belief. But I'd say that pretty much every sort of executive book out there will probably have some touch on the sort of similar topics, and so I think that's sort of the overwhelming advice, though, is kind of like get through it, like persevere, So
how do you balance success with who you are as an individual, with success in the home, with success in the business? How do you balance all those things day to day and figure out what to prioritize on any given day?
It's a good question. I'm going to take that sort of in a different way, which was, how do I forgive myself sometimes with not being successful in certain ways? And I was at this conference once where Jeff Bezos said that he looks for what he's giving energy to. And so sometimes in his life, what's giving him the most energy is his family. And so he'll end work a little bit early, go home and spend time with his family, or take his kids to school in the morning because that's what's giving him the most energy. And then sometimes it's work that's giving him the most energy, and he goes to work and he'll work till 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, because, and it was because if he focused on energy more, it actually made him better in both settings. So if he was at work and that was giving the most energy, then when he was with his kids, he was very present and excited because he was so excited about life. And if it was with his kids and he would go to work and he'd be giving it his all because he just had all this great time with his kids. And so to answer that question, I sort of take that advice. And I think for me, it was about, what do I want to give work and what do I want to give my kids? And if my kids can see me energized and happy and excited every day, then they're going to forgive me for not always being there, when they get home, or not, doing everything for them at all times, right? And same thing with work. Like if I can be more present at work and be excited and be the leader that people want me to be, that's going to pay more dividends than me just showing up and being in a bad mood or being, not completely present.
Something I've written about before is you can't be productive without being present. A lot of stress and heartache seems to come when you're on your phone doing work stuff when you got kids there, or you're trying to focus on work stuff while kids are running around, like all of the different sort of derivatives of that. It's very tough, isn't it, when you've got all those intersecting worlds that collide at the one time, rather than giving your attention to those individually and having the respect for that.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think that the pandemic really changed that for a lot of people. And I think it changed it for me too. I mean, just anecdotally, I think it's really interesting because I truly believe that's true. Like, you having the ability to compartmentalize allows you to be present. And so when things get really muddled is when you have a lack of real presence and real present moment, like thinking.
Last question before we move into the rocket round. On your best day, what's an affirmation that you would write on a flashcard that you could show yourself on your worst day?
So I think that something I learned, one of my advisors in college told me that I take, is that showing up is 90% of life. And sometimes on my worst day, you think I don't even want to go. I'd rather just not do something. But if you just show up, that's actually good things will come out of that. And so you never know. And I think that I still even need that today, till this day today, that on my worst day, I'm like, I don't even want to go. I don't want to do this. But showing up is 90% of life.
Just show up. That's what I
Just
say
show up.
every time I go and do like a fitness class. I'm like, the goal isn't to do a great fitness class. The goal is to show up. You know, they're going to kick your ass when you get there.
That's right. Just show up. And guess what? You probably will work out. Things will happen. You know, it's crazy, but it's 90% of life.
Well, let's now move into the Win the Day Rocket Round. 10 questions for some quick answers. You up for this one, Angela?
Okay.
Number 1, what quote inspires you the most?
So there's a quote from Shakespeare that says, "It's not in the stars that holds our destiny, but in ourselves."
Love it. Number 2, morning coffee or evening wine?
Neither. I don't drink coffee, nor do I drink wine, but I probably will have a tea.
Love it. What type of tea?
Green tea.
Nice. Number 3, what's one bit of advice you would give your 18-year-old self?
That people and friendships will help you more than just education.
Number 4, what book do you gift the most?
Shoe Dog.
Phil Knight, great book, isn't it?
Yeah, great book.
So good. Number 5, was there a vulnerability you once hid within that became your superpower?
Yeah, I used to be, very analytical about everything and overanalyze things. And I think that actually now I realize that my ability to overanalyze probably helps us a lot and think about sort of different outcomes and plan different things. And so I used to try to avoid that, but now I embrace it.
Number 6, what's one thing you've learned about failure?
I learned that there is no such thing as true failure, that you either win or you learn, but you'll get better.
Number 7, if you could sit on a park bench and have a conversation with someone alive or dead, who would it be?
I'd probably speak to David Foster Wallace. I find him to be so fascinating, and I'd love to know what's inside his brain. And he's also funny and great at pop culture, so it would have been awesome.
Number 8, what tool or resource best helps you run your life or your business?
I think that of tools, Excel is probably my favorite thing in the whole world. I joke that the inventor of Excel is probably like my dream husband. It's just like, it's such a brilliant machination. It's there's so many things you can do with it. You can handle everything.
I love it. Number 9, what's one thing on your bucket list?
I really want to go on a safari with my children. That's the bucket list for me.
Be very cool. And final question, number 10, what's one thing you do to win the day?
I every day try to be as optimistic as I can about the day itself, what I'm accomplishing, and the goals that we're trying to set.
The win the day mentality. I love it, Angela. So good. Well, there are a bunch of ways to connect with Angela and Yumi, and we'll link to all of these in the show notes. You can follow them on Instagram at Yumi, visit their website, helloyumi.com, and drop into your local Target to check out their full range of products. Again, all of that and more will be linked in the show notes. Angela, thanks so much for coming on the show.
And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Win the Day podcast. We want to hear your thoughts on what we covered today, so drop a comment on the YouTube version of this episode with your favorite takeaway, any questions you have, or what actions you'll be taking as a result of what was shared in this episode. And if you found value in the Win the Day podcast, leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You'll find a link to both of those in the show notes. It'll only take you a few seconds, and more ratings really helps other people discover the show so they can get the mindset upgrade they need, and we can bring more winners into the Win the Day movement. That's all for this episode. Get out there and win the day. Until next time, onwards and upwards, always.